Am I wrong for closing the door on my neighbor after she kept pushing for holiday treats? Hey, this is a weird situation, and I honestly don't know if I overreacted. I feel bad, but at the same time, I'm just exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Let me explain. I'm a 21-year-old guy living with my dad in his house in Portland. My mom passed away in early September after a long battle with cancer. It completely shattered me. She was my biggest supporter, my role model, and the heart of our family. Losing her left a void that I don't think will ever be filled. My dad took it really hard too, which is why I chose to stay with him instead of moving out. I wanted to be there for him, just like he's always been there for me. One of the hardest parts about the holidays is how much they remind me of her. She loved this time of year. She was the type of person who would go all out, decorating the house, playing holiday music nonstop, and most importantly, baking. She had these amazing recipes for peanut brittle fudge and double chocolate crinkle cookies. Every year she would make dozens of batches and put them in containers to give out to family, friends, my dad's coworkers, and all our neighbors. It was her thing, and people came to expect it. This year I tried to keep the tradition alive, but it's been incredibly hard. Between schoolwork and my side job, I barely have the energy to function, let alone bake in bulk. The only reason I even attempted to make some sweets was that while I like them and I knew my dad would appreciate them. But I never planned on making the usual huge batches. So far, I had only made 2 small test batches of peanut brittle, trying to get the recipe right. They weren't perfect, but they were okay. That's when my neighbor Karen knocked on our door. I opened it expecting maybe a Christmas card or a quick hello, but instead she immediately asked, "Hey, did you finish making the peanut brittle yet?" I was taken aback, but I explained, "Oh yeah, I've been trying to perfect the recipe, but I'm not sure I'll be making big batches this year." Instead of understanding, she just laughed and said, "Wow, your mom is really slacking this year, huh?" I just stood there stunned. Did she not know? My mom had been so sick in her final months that she could barely leave the house. We told the neighbors when her condition worsened. Karen and my mom used to chat whenever they ran into each other, but in her last year, my mom wasn't up for those walks anymore. I thought she knew. Trying to keep my emotions in check, I told her, "My mom passed away in September." Her face went blank for a second before she just casually said, "Oh, so you're not making peanut brittle at all? What about tomorrow?" That was it. That was the moment I just couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't say anything rude. I just closed the door. And then I stood there gripping my hands into fists, because if I didn't, I was going to completely break down. A few minutes later, my dad came out of his room asking if it was a package delivery. I told him it was just Karen asking about peanut brittle. He looked just as confused as I felt. "You haven't even figured out the right temperature yet," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. But right after that he got a text from Karen. Apparently, she had the nerve to message him saying that I was being rude and dismissive toward her. I explained everything from her initial comment to how she acted after I told her my mom had died. My dad got quiet, then his eyes got watery and he just shook his head. Well, he said, "I guess this means more peanut brittle for us." That was his way of trying to make me feel better, but I could tell he was just as upset as I was. Since then, I felt conflicted. I didn't yell or lash out at her, but closing the door that fast probably wasn't the most polite thing to do. At the same time, I don't understand how she could be so insensitive. She knew my mom had been sick. Even if she somehow missed the news of her passing, she could have at least taken a second to process what I told her instead of immediately pushing for a batch of candy. I feel bad because maybe she didn't mean any harm. Maybe she was just caught off guard and didn't know what to say. But at the same time, I was already struggling to get through the holidays without my mom, and her comments just made it so much worse. So was I wrong for closing the door on her like that?